I'm 94 years old, and I learned how to control my mind in 60 seconds, only after it had already cost me the person I loved most. My name is Thomas Caldwell. I don't have much time left. The doctors don't say it directly, but at 94, you don't need anyone to explain what your body already knows. The stairs feel steeper. The mornings take longer. The nights are longer still. When you get this old, your mind becomes your closest companion. That's not always a comfort. For most of my life, my mind was not my friend. It was loud, restless, constant. It replayed conversations. It predicted disasters. It imagined insults that never came and failures that never happened. I thought that was intelligence. I thought if I could think faster and deeper than everyone else, I would stay ahead of pain. Instead, I lived tense. The 60-second technique I'm going to talk about isn't impressive. It's almost embarrassingly simple. I didn't invent it. I stumbled into it when there was nothing left to lose. But I'm getting ahead of myself. When I was in my 20s, I worked as a sales rep for a small appliance company in Illinois. I drove long highways, stayed in roadside motels, wore pressed shirts even in summer heat. I was ambitious, careful, determined not to fail. Every meeting I had, I replayed afterward. Did I speak too quickly? Did I sound confident enough? Did that pause mean they disliked me? By the time I got back to the motel room at night, my body was exhausted, but my mind was wide awake. I lay there staring at the ceiling, reconstructing every sentence I had spoken that day. I told myself this was improvement, that this was how successful men sharpened themselves. In my 30s, I married Margaret. She had a steady voice, calm eyes. She didn't rush her thoughts. She could sit on a porch for an hour without filling the silence. I couldn't. Even on our honeymoon, I worried about money. I worried about whether I would be good enough as a husband. I worried about future children we hadn't even conceived yet. Margaret once said to me gently, "Tom, you don't have to solve everything tonight." I smiled at her. Then I stayed awake solving everything anyway. We bought a house, had 2 sons, built what looked from the outside like a solid American life. Mortgage paid on time, kids in Little League, summer barbecues, church on Sundays. But inside my head there was constant noise. If my boss didn't smile at me one morning, I assumed I was on the edge of losing my job. If one of my sons came home quiet from school, I imagined bullying, failure, catastrophe. If Margaret seemed distant for a day, I analyzed every word I'd said the week before. Nothing was allowed to just be. Everything was examined. The cost of that kind of living isn't dramatic at first. It's not a car crash. It's not a scandal. It's small. Margaret would tell me about her day, and I would nod while mentally drafting tomorrow's presentation. My son would ask, "Dad, are you listening?" And I would say yes, even though I was only half there. Half there becomes a habit. In my 40s, I had a panic episode in a grocery store. Nothing outwardly happened. No one even noticed. But my chest tightened. My vision narrowed. My thoughts raced so fast they felt like they were tripping over each other. I thought I was dying. The doctor later said it was stress, anxiety, overactive thinking. He suggested medication. I refused at first. I didn't want to admit that my own mind was overpowering me. I thought strong men controlled themselves through will. But will was exactly what I was using to keep the noise going. Years passed. Promotions came. The boys grew into men. Margaret became quieter, not unhappy, just quieter. There were evenings she would sit beside me on the couch and rest her head on my shoulder. I would be thinking about retirement funds, about health insurance, about market trends. She once said, "You're here, but you're not." I defended myself. "I'm doing this for us." That sentence sounds noble. It hides a lot. The turning point came when I was 72. Margaret had been complaining about fatigue for months. I thought it was normal aging. I researched vitamins, diet adjustments. I made lists. Then came the diagnosis: ovarian cancer, advanced. In the hospital, sitting beside her bed, my mind tried to do what it always did: calculate survival rates, research treatments, estimate timelines. For the first time in my life, those calculations felt useless. She looked smaller in that hospital bed. One night around 2 a.m., the machines were quiet, the hallway outside dim. I was sitting there, my head full of numbers and options and fear. She reached out and squeezed my hand. "Tom," she said, her voice thin but steady. "Stop." I leaned closer. "Stop what?" "Stop trying to control it." I didn't know how. For 50 years, control had meant thinking ahead, planning, anticipating. Now there was nothing ahead that I could fix. She closed her eyes and said, "Just breathe with me." That was it. No complex method, no grand philosophy. Just breathe with me. So I did. I watched her chest rise. I felt my own breath follow. Inhale, exhale. For one full minute, I didn't calculate anything. I didn't imagine the funeral. I didn't imagine the empty house. I didn't imagine life without her. I simply matched my breathing to hers. 60 seconds. It was the first quiet minute I had experienced in decades. She passed away 3 months later. The house became silent in a way that was different from any silence before. At night, my mind tried to devour me. It replayed every missed moment, every time I had been distracted, every argument I had overanalyzed instead of resolving simply. Regret is loud. One evening, sitting alone at the kitchen table, I felt the old panic rising again. The same tightening chest, the same racing thoughts. And I remembered her voice. "Just breathe with me." There was no one there now, but I closed my eyes. I placed one hand on the table to feel something solid, and I counted one slow inhale, then one slow exhale. I watched the air move in and out as if it were the only task in the world. For 60 seconds. Nothing magical happened. The grief was still there. The loss was still real. But the storm in my head softened. I realized something painful. All my life, I had tried to control my mind by arguing with it, by outthinking it, by overpowering it. But control didn't come from more thought. It came from stepping outside of thought, even briefly. 60 seconds at a time. I cannot get back the years I lived half present. I cannot sit across from Margaret again and give her my full attention the way I should have. Time does not return what we overlook. But I can tell you what I wish someone had told me when I was 30. You do not need to solve the next 10 years tonight. You do not need to replay every mistake until it bleeds. When your mind begins to run, you can step aside for 1 minute. Feel your feet on the floor. Feel the air in your lungs. Listen to one real sound around you. Just 1 minute. It won't fix your marriage. It won't cure illness. It won't erase loss. But it will bring you back into the room. And being in the room is more important than winning every argument inside your head. At 94, I spend a lot of time in silence. The boys call, the grandchildren visit. They're kind to me. But there are long stretches of day where it is just me and my thoughts. I don't fight them the way I used to. When they grow loud, I give them 60 seconds of quiet. Not to suppress them, just to remind myself that I am more than them. Margaret's voice still echoes in my memory. Just breathe with me. If this means something to you, don't take it as advice from an old man trying to sound wise. Take it as a confession from someone who waited too long to learn something simple. You cannot control everything that happens. You can control where your attention rests for 1 minute. And sometimes, 1 minute is enough to come back to your life before it slips past you. I don't know how many minutes I have left, but I spend them more carefully now. Breathing in, breathing out. Finally here.